They didn't just miss my 80th birthday. They planned a family cruise without me, posted photos from the ship while I sat alone with a store-bought cupcake, waiting for even one phone call that never came. But what they didn't know was that I was sitting at my kitchen table with something more powerful than party invitations: a pen, a lawyer's number, and $42 million they thought was already theirs. They treated me like I was already gone, like my money was more important than my presence, like I wouldn't notice being erased from their lives. So I decided to show them what it really means to be forgotten, not just for one day, but forever. My name is Margaret Chen, and I built an empire from nothing but determination and sleepless nights. 27 years ago, I started with a single food truck in Seattle's Pike Place Market, serving bubble tea before anyone knew what tapioca pearls were. Rain or shine, I stood behind that counter from 5 a.m. to midnight, my feet swollen, my hands sticky with syrup, my back aching from bending over boiling pots. But I had 3 children to feed, and dreams bigger than that 8x10 aluminum box on wheels. By the time I turned 70, Chen's Pacific Treats had become a West Coast phenomenon. 127 locations across Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, a production facility in Portland, and a net worth that made my accountant whistle low every April. I'd given my children Vincent, Sandra, and Robert everything: private schools, debt-free college, down payments on their houses, seed money for their failed businesses, bailouts for their divorces. I never kept score because that's not what mothers do. We give until our bones are hollow, and we call it love. But money changes people in ways you don't see until it's too late. It starts small. Forgotten Mother's Days explained away by busy schedules, Christmas visits that shrink from weeks to hours, phone calls that dwindle from daily to monthly, to only when they need something. I told myself they were building their own lives. I told myself this was natural, healthy even. I told myself a lot of things to make the silence hurt less. Then came May 15th, my 80th birthday. Not just any birthday, the one I'd talked about for years. When I turn 80, I told them every family dinner, I want all of us together. No excuses, no exceptions, just my family around me, like it used to be. They'd smiled, nodded, promised. Sandra even put it in her phone right there at the table. May 15th, 2024, she'd said. Mom's big 80. Wouldn't miss it for the world. I need you to understand what I gave up to build what they now assumed was theirs. When my husband Daniel died in that construction accident, Vincent was 12, Sandra was 9, and Robert was only 5. The insurance money barely covered the funeral. I sold our house, moved into a 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, and used the last $3,000 to buy that used food truck. Every morning at 4 a.m., I'd leave the kids with Mrs. Nguyen downstairs, drive to the wholesale market for supplies, then park at Pike Place before the tourists arrived. My first menu was simple: bubble tea, Vietnamese sandwiches, and spring rolls made from my mother's recipe. I remember my hands cramping from rolling hundreds of spring rolls each night, Vincent helping me seal them while Sandra counted the day's earnings, and little Robert fell asleep on the couch. The first winter nearly broke us. The truck's heater died in November, and I served customers while my breath froze in the air. My fingers turned purple despite the gloves. Customers would ask if I was okay, and I'd smile and say, "Just keeping warm by staying busy." But at night, I'd soak my hands in hot water and cry where the children couldn't see. The breakthrough came when a food blogger wrote about the bubble tea lady who never stopped smiling. Suddenly, lines formed before I even opened. I hired my first employee, then another. Within 2 years, I'd saved enough for a second truck. Vincent designed our logo, a phoenix rising from tea leaves. "Because you rose from the ashes, Mom," he'd said, and I'd framed that napkin sketch. By the time Vincent graduated high school, We had 5 trucks and our first brick-and-mortar store. I'd missed exactly one of his basketball games, 2 of Sandra's piano recitals, and none of Robert's science fairs. I'd learned to do payroll between batches of spring rolls, negotiate leases while stirring tapioca pearls, and review contracts with sticky fingers from mango syrup. I gave them everything but never forgot to give them my time too. Sunday dinners were sacred. No matter how many locations we opened, Sunday meant family. I'd cook their favorites, Vincent's beef pho, Sandra's shrimp pad thai, Robert's coconut curry. We'd sit around my dining table, the same oak table from our first apartment, and talk about everything except business. "Promise me," I'd tell them as they got older, "promise me we'll always have this. The money is just paper, the stores are just buildings, but this..." I'd gesture at all of us together. This is what I built it all for. They'd promise. Every time, they'd promise. The changes started 3 years ago when Vincent's tech startup failed. I'd invested $500,000, told him not to worry about paying it back. "Family helps family," I'd said. But something shifted in his eyes. Not gratitude, but calculation. He started asking about the business more, about succession planning, about my will. "Just want to make sure you're protected, Mom," he'd say. But his questions felt like inventory. Sandra came next with her divorce. Her husband had cheated, and she needed $300,000 for lawyers and a new start. Of course I gave it. But then she started bringing paperwork to Sunday dinners. "Just some estate planning documents, Mom. Standard stuff." She'd hover while I signed birthday cards, watching how steady my hands were. Once, I caught her taking a photo of my signature. Robert, my baby, broke my heart the slowest. He'd always called every Tuesday, our tradition since he'd moved to Los Angeles for his marketing job. But the calls became business updates about Chen's Pacific Treats competitors, suggestions for modernizing our approach, hints that maybe I should enjoy retirement and let them handle things. Then came the travel plans. It started innocently, Sandra mentioning a family cruise she was researching. "The kids would love it," she said about her teenagers. Vincent jumped in about dates that would work with his schedule. Robert flew up specifically to discuss it, which should have been my first red flag. He never flew up without 3 weeks' notice. "When are you thinking?" I asked, reaching for my calendar. They exchanged looks. Sandra cleared her throat. "Actually, Mom, we were thinking, maybe you'd enjoy a quiet birthday this year. Travel is so hard at your age. All those stares on cruise ships, the rich food. We'd worry about you the whole time." "But we'll celebrate when we get back," Vincent added quickly. "Maybe a nice dinner at that place you like?" Robert nodded enthusiastically. "We could even hire a photographer, make a real event of it." I stared at my 3 children, sitting in my living room, planning my 80th birthday celebration without me. The same room where I'd taught them to walk, where we'd weathered Daniel's death, where I'd told them about each new store opening. Now they sat here, erasing me from my own milestone. "That sounds practical," I managed to say. They smiled, relieved. Sandra even hugged me. "We knew you'd understand, Mom. You're always so reasonable." But behind my reasonable smile, something ancient and sharp was waking up. They'd mistaken my gentleness for weakness, my silence for acceptance. They had no idea what I was capable of. After all, they'd never seen me fight. They'd only seen me win. May 15th arrived with Seattle's typical spring rain. I woke at 5 a.m., like always, and made myself tea in the kitchen where I'd built an empire. The cruise ship would have left Port Miami yesterday. I'd looked up the departure times. My children were somewhere in the Caribbean, probably just waking up to room service and ocean views. I dressed carefully, my favorite blue dress, pearl earrings Daniel gave me for our 10th anniversary, the jade bracelet from my mother. If anyone was going to wish me happy birthday, I'd be ready. The phone sat silent on the kitchen table, fully charged, volume turned up, just in case. By noon, I'd reorganized the spice cabinet and written thank you cards for birthday wishes that hadn't come. Mrs. Patterson next door knocked at 2 p.m. with a homemade coffee cake. 80 years? She beamed. Your family must have something special planned. Oh yes, I lied. They're very thoughtful. At 4 p.m., my phone finally buzzed. My heart jumped. Maybe they'd arranged something from the ship. Maybe there was a surprise coming? It was my dentist's office, confirming next week's appointment. By evening, I couldn't pretend anymore. I drove to the grocery store and bought myself a single chocolate cupcake from the bakery section. The teenage cashier smiled sadly when she saw it. "Birthday treat?" she asked, noticing I was dressed up. "Yes," I said, "my 80th. Her face fell. "Oh, happy birthday! I hope you have people to celebrate with." "Thank you, dear," I said, and left before she could see my eyes water. Back home, I sat at my dining table, that same oak table where we'd shared thousands of meals, and lit a single candle on my store-bought cupcake. The rain drummed against the windows. The house felt enormous, empty, like a museum of a life that had mattered to no one but me. Then my phone buzzed. Finally. I grabbed it eagerly. A notification from Instagram. Sandra had posted a photo. There they were, all 3 of my children, their spouses, my 6 grandchildren, raising champagne glasses on a sunset deck. Sandra's caption read, "Making memories with the family. So blessed to have this time together." Family cruise. Grateful by 3 generations. 3 generations, but they'd forgotten the first one. Vincent had his arm around his son. Sandra's twins were laughing at something Robert said. They all glowed with happiness and expensive tans. In the corner of the photo, I could see a banner, "Bon Voyage Chen Family." I stared at that photo until my eyes burned. Then I saw the comments rolling in from their friends. Beautiful family. So jealous. Family goals. Not one person asked where I was. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Daniel's old recliner, still in my birthday dress, watching the clock turn from May 15th to May 16th. My 80th birthday was officially over, uncelebrated, unacknowledged, erased. The cupcake sat untouched on the table, its frosting slowly sliding off in the warm kitchen air. By 3 a.m., more cruise photos had appeared. Robert posted a video of a lavish dinner, panning across the table to show everyone's meal. "Living our best lives," he captioned it. The ship's menu was visible. They were eating lobster and prime rib while I'd had toast for dinner because I'd lost my appetite. I finally understood the truth. I wasn't just forgotten. I was deliberately excluded. This wasn't oversight or busy schedules or the innocent selfishness of adult children. This was calculated. They'd planned this trip for months, coordinated schedules, bought tickets, arranged childcare, packed bags, all while looking me in the eye and lying about a nice dinner when they returned. The worst part was realizing when it had started. Vincent's questions about the will, Sandra's estate planning documents, Robert's suggestions about retirement. They weren't protecting me. They were measuring me, waiting for me to become weak enough to push aside. I thought about Mrs. Nguyen, who'd watched my babies all those years ago. She died alone in a nursing home in Tacoma. Her daughter had sold her house while she was still alive, told everyone she had dementia, when really she just had a stroke that affected her speech. I'd visited her near the end, and she'd gripped my hand with desperate strength, trying to tell me something her voice couldn't form. Now I understood what she'd been trying to say. Don't let them. I looked around my living room at the photos covering every surface. Vincent's college graduation, Sandra's wedding, Robert's first marketing award, my grandchildren at various ages, gap-toothed and grinning. I'd paid for the orthodontics that straightened those smiles. I'd funded the educations that led to those careers. I'd given them everything, including the ability to exclude me. On the mantel sat a photo from my 70th birthday. All of us together at the Space Needle restaurant, the city lights twinkling below. They'd made speeches that night about what I meant to them. Sandra had cried, saying I was her hero. Vincent called me the strongest person he knew. Robert said he owed me everything. 10 years. That's all it had taken for me to go from hero to inconvenience. I picked up that photo and turned it face down. Then I did the same with every other family photo in the room, one by one, until I was surrounded by blank frames. If they could erase me, I could erase them too. But I wouldn't stop at photographs. The sun rose on May 16th, and with it came a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I stood up from Daniel's recliner, my birthday dress wrinkled beyond salvation, and made a decision. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to wait by the phone. I wasn't going to pretend this was acceptable. I showered, dressed in my sharpest business suit, the charcoal one I wore to board meetings, and made myself the strongest coffee I'd had in months. Then I sat at my computer and began making lists, the same way I'd planned the expansion of Chen's Pacific Treats from one truck to an empire. First, I needed facts. I logged into our business banking portal and reviewed the company's structure. I still owned 79% of Chen's Pacific Treats. I'd given Vincent, Sandra, and Robert each 7% as gifts over the years, with promises of more when the time was right. They'd been pushing for me to transfer majority ownership, create a family trust with them as beneficiaries. "For tax purposes, Mom," they'd say. Next, I pulled up my personal accounts. $42 million in liquid assets, not counting the business. The house in Bellevue worth $3 million. The vacation property in Cannon Beach. The investment portfolio I'd built while they were sleeping in on weekends. Then I made another list. Every gift, every bailout, every loan that was never repaid. Vincent's failed startup, $500,000. His house down payment, $200,000. Private school for his kids, $40,000 per year. Sandra's divorce, $300,000. Her house, $250,000. Her children's college funds, $100,000 each. Robert's MBA, $200,000. His condo, $400,000. His wedding, $75,000. The total made me laugh. Actually laugh out loud in my empty kitchen. $3.2 million in direct gifts, not counting the smaller amounts, the vacations I'd paid for, the cars I'd bought them. And that didn't include the salaries they drew from the company for positions they barely showed up for. I opened my journal, the leather one Sandra gave me last Christmas, with a note that said, "For your memories, Mom," and wrote one sentence. "They think I'm already dead. Time to show them what resurrection looks like." Then I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I wanted, Patricia Horvath, the estate attorney who'd helped me structure the business years ago. She'd be in her 70s now, probably retired, but she'd told me once to call if I ever needed her. She answered on the second ring. "Margaret?" What a lovely surprise. "Patricia, I need to rewrite my will completely. Can you still practice, or can you recommend someone who specializes in complicated family situations?" She chuckled. "Honey, I'm retired, but for you? I'll make an exception. How about we meet tomorrow? And Margaret, bring everything. Account numbers, deeds, company documents, everything." I hung up and smiled at my reflection in the kitchen window. They wanted to celebrate without me? Fine, let them celebrate. While they were toasting their family cruise, I was planning their futures that would look very different from what they expected. Patricia Horvath lived in a glass house overlooking Puget Sound, all clean lines and modern art. She greeted me at the door in jeans and a cashmere sweater, looking nothing like the fierce attorney who'd protected my interests years ago. But when she saw my face, her casual smile sharpened into something more familiar. "They screwed up, didn't they?" she said, leading me to her home office. "My 80th birthday," I said simply. "They went on a family cruise without me." Patricia whistled low. "Idiots. Absolute idiots. Coffee or war room beverage of choice? Whiskey?" "Coffee," I said. "I need to be sharp for this." For 3 hours, we dissected my empire. Patricia had software that could model different scenarios, show me exactly how each decision would play out. She pulled up my existing will on her screen, the one that split everything equally among my 3 children, with provisions for grandchildren's education. "Straightforward succession," she noted. "They probably have this memorized." "They've certainly been counting on it," I said, showing her the photos from the cruise. Patricia studied them, her expression darkening. "All 3 went? All the grandchildren too?" "Every single one, planned for months while telling me we'd have dinner when they got back." "Okay," Patricia said, pulling out a legal pad. "Let's talk options. We can go scorched earth, leave them nothing. We can go educational, leave them something but with conditions. We can go charitable, give it all away. Or we can get creative." "Creative," I said immediately. "I don't want to just punish them. I want them to understand." Patricia grinned. "Now you're talking. Tell me about your grandchildren. Ages, personalities, relationships with you." I went through all 6. Vincent's son Marcus, 22, who'd called me weekly until last year. His daughter Chloe, 19, who used to bake with me every Christmas until she got too busy. Sandra's twins, Eric and Emma, 17, who I'd taught to make spring rolls, but who now only texted when they needed money. Robert's children, Lily, 14, and James, 11, the youngest and most distant. I'd seen them maybe 10 times in the last 2 years. "Any of them reach out for your birthday?" Patricia asked. "Not one." "Okay, any other family?" I thought of my sister Ellen in Vancouver, who sent a card every year and called faithfully. My nephew David, who ran a food bank and had never asked for a penny. My late husband's brother Thomas, who still brought flowers to Daniel's grave. "Yes," I said. "Family who actually acts like family." "Perfect. Now, let's talk about your business. Who actually runs it?" I laughed bitterly. "My COO, Maria Gonzalez. She's been with me 15 years. My children have titles and salaries, but Maria does the work." Patricia made notes. "House staff? Close friends? Charities you support?" I listed them all. Rosa, who'd cleaned my house for 20 years, the food bank I'd supported since my truck days, the scholarship fund at the culinary school, the women's shelter where I'd once volunteered. "Here's what I'm thinking," Patricia said finally. "We create a will that tells a story. Every bequest explains why. Every exclusion has a reason, and we make sure they can't contest it. Video testimony, medical evaluation, the works." "When can we start?" I asked. "How about now?" Patricia smiled. "But first, let me show you something." She pulled up a photo on her phone. Her own family, 3 generations gathered around a birthday cake. "My 80th, she said. "Every single person there because they wanted to be, not because of what I might leave them. That's what you deserved, Margaret, and we're going to make sure they know it." While my children floated through the Caribbean, I orchestrated my first move. Patricia had suggested starting with the company, my biggest asset, and the one they assumed was already theirs. They'd been drawing salaries for years. Vincent as VP of Strategic Development, Sandra as Director of Marketing, Robert as Head of Innovation. Fancy titles for people who showed up once a month, if that. I called an emergency board meeting for Tuesday morning. As majority shareholder, I had the authority. The other board members, 2 independent directors I'd appointed years ago, arrived looking concerned. "Gentlemen," I said, "we need to discuss executive performance and restructuring." I presented Maria Gonzalez's reports. Vincent had missed 80% of his supposed meetings. Sandra's last marketing plan was 2 years old. Robert's innovations were all ideas Maria's team had developed. Meanwhile, Maria worked 60-hour weeks, managed 127 locations, and had grown revenue by 32% in 3 years. The board voted unanimously to restructure. Maria was promoted to President and Chief Operating Officer, effective immediately, with a salary increase to $400,000 plus equity options. Vincent, Sandra, and Robert would be terminated with 30 days' notice and standard severance per their contracts. "They'll fight this," one board member warned. "Let them try," I said. "They can't run a company from a cruise ship." I had our corporate attorney draft the termination letters, sent while they were at sea with intermittent internet. The subject line was simple: organizational restructuring. The content was professional, cold, factual. Their positions had been eliminated due to redundancy. Their final paychecks would include unused vacation time. Not that they'd ever been present enough to earn it. Then I did something else. I called each of their assistants, the people who'd been doing their actual work, and offered them promotions and raises. Every single one accepted. The next morning, I arrived at the flagship location at 5 a.m., just like in the old days. I put on an apron, stepped behind the counter, and started making bubble tea. The early morning shift manager nearly dropped her keys. "Mrs. Chen, what are you doing here?" "Working," I said. "Pour me a cup of tapioca pearls, would you?" Let's see if I still remember how to do this right. Word spread through our internal network within hours. The founder was back, working the morning rush like she was 25 again. Employees started posting photos on our company's social media. "The Phoenix rises again." One caption read, referencing our logo. By lunch, I'd served hundreds of customers. My feet ached. My back screamed. But I felt more alive than I had in years. This was my empire, built one bubble tea at a time. My children might have forgotten that, but I never would. That evening, as I soaked my tired feet, my phone exploded with messages. The cruise ship had reached port with Wi-Fi. Vincent's text was in all caps. "What the hell is this email?" I didn't respond. I had bubble tea to perfect and an empire to protect. They returned from their cruise on a Thursday, tanned and entitled. By Friday morning, all 3 were pounding on my door. I watched them through the security camera Patricia had insisted I install, looking like angry children who'd had their toys taken away. I let them knock for 5 full minutes before opening the door. "Mother!" Vincent pushed past me. "What is this insanity about restructuring? You can't fire us from our own company." "My company," I corrected calmly. "I own 79%. And yes, I can." Sandra was crying, her default manipulation. "Mom, how could you? While we were away, we were celebrating as a family." "Were you?" I asked. "What were you celebrating exactly?" Robert, always the smooth talker, tried reason. "Look, Mom, if this is about your birthday, we're sorry. We should have called. But destroying our livelihoods over a missed party?" I laughed, actually laughed. "You think this is about a party? Sit down, all of you." They sat on my couch like scolded children. I remained standing. "Vincent, when was the last time you reviewed a strategic plan?" "Sandra, name one marketing campaign you personally developed." "Robert, tell me one innovation you've brought to the company." Silence. "You've collected $300,000 annual salaries for playing executives while Maria ran everything. You've treated my life's work like your personal ATM. And you had the audacity to plan my obsolescence while cashing my checks." "That's not," Sandra started. I'm not finished, I said quietly, and something in my voice made her stop. I have security footage of you taking photos of my signature. I have emails between you discussing my mental decline. I have records of you consulting with estate lawyers about contesting competency. Their faces went white. Did you think I was stupid? I continued. Did you think building this empire from nothing made me soft? I survived your father's death, raised you alone, fought sexism and racism in business before it was fashionable to call it out. I didn't get here by being naive. Vincent found his voice. We never meant— Yes, you did, I cut him off. You meant to sideline me, take over, and wait for me to die quietly. But here's the thing, I'm not dying, I'm thriving, and you're unemployed. You can't do this, Sandra wailed. We have mortgages, private school tuition, expenses. Then I suggest you find jobs, I said. Real ones, where you actually have to show up. Robert stood, his face ugly with rage. We'll sue, we'll contest everything, we'll prove you're not competent. I smiled. Try it. I have a medical evaluation from last week. My lawyers have documented everything, and if you pursue this, I'll counter-sue for attempted elder financial abuse. The forensic accountants will love examining your spending. They left, slamming my door so hard the frame shook. But I didn't care. I had more calls to make. That afternoon, I promoted 6 more long-time employees, restructured the board to include Maria and 2 additional independent directors, and created an employee profit-sharing program. The company I'd built on the bent backs of immigrant dreams would honor those dreams, with or without my children. 2 weeks later, Patricia and I executed the masterstroke. We'd worked out every detail, every bequest, every word of the new will. But we added something special, individual letters to be read after my death, explaining my decisions. Patricia video recorded me reading the will itself, clear-eyed and steady-voiced, with a psychiatrist present to attest to my mental capacity. The will itself was a masterpiece of pointed generosity. To my sister Ellen, $5 million, and my house in Bellevue, because she remembered every birthday for 40 years and never asked for anything in return. To my nephew David, $3 million in funding for his food bank, because he feeds the hungry instead of feeding off others. To Maria González, 40% de propiedad de Chen's Pacific Treats, porque la ganó con sudor y lealtad mientras otros recogían cheques. To Rosa, my housekeeper, $500,000 and my car, because she treated my home with more respect than those who grew up in it. To each longtime employee who'd been with me over 10 years, $50,000, because they built this empire alongside me. To the scholarship fund at the culinary school, $2 million, to help others rise from food trucks to dreams. To the women's shelter, $1 million, because they understand that family isn't always blood. And to my children, I left them each exactly $1,000, the same amount I'd started with after Daniel died. Along with this message, I leave you the same opportunity I had to build something from almost nothing. You've had 27 years of advantages I never dreamed of. Now prove you can survive without my shadow. But the real twist came with the grandchildren. Each would receive $1 million, but only if they met specific conditions: complete college without their parents' financial support, work a minimum wage job for 1 full year, volunteer 200 hours at a charity of their choice, and write an essay about what they learned. The money would be held in trust until all conditions were met. They'll contest it, Patricia warned. Let them, I said. The publicity alone will ruin them. Children sue mother for only leaving them $1,000 after abandoning her on 80th birthday. How do you think that plays out? We filed the will with the court, sent copies to my bank, and created an irrevocable trust for the grandchildren's portions. Then I did something else. I posted a simple message on Facebook, knowing they'd all see it. At 80, I've learned the difference between being valued and being valuable. I've updated my estate planning to reflect this wisdom. May we all get what we truly deserve. My phone rang within minutes. I let it go to voicemail. 27 calls in the first hour. 42 texts. I read none of them. Instead, I called Ellen in Vancouver. "Happy belated birthday, dear one," she said warmly. "I'm sorry I couldn't visit. How was your celebration?" "Educational," I said. "Ellen, I'm changing some things. Would you like to come stay for a while? I have an empty house and a full heart." "Oh, Margaret," she said softly. "What did they do?" "What they thought they could get away with," I said. "They were wrong." The fallout was swift and spectacular. Vincent tried to rally the employees against me, calling emergency meetings at locations he thought I wouldn't hear about. But Maria had installed new regional managers, people loyal to the company, not to hereditary titles. They reported every word back to me. "Your mother has lost it," Vincent told the Seattle staff. "She's destroying our family legacy out of spite." One brave shift supervisor raised her hand. "Sir, with respect, she was here at 5 a.m. making bubble tea last week. When was the last time you worked a shift?" He'd stormed out. That supervisor got a raise. Sandra took to social media, posting vague messages about toxic parents and narcissistic abuse. Her friends, the ones who'd commented so enthusiastically on her cruise photos, were notably silent now. One finally commented, "Wasn't it just your mom's 80th birthday? Did you celebrate with her?" Sandra deleted the entire thread. Robert tried the legal route, hiring an attorney to challenge my mental competency. The lawyer requested my medical records, financial statements, and business decisions from the past year. Patricia compiled everything gladly, including security footage of me running board meetings, solving complex supply chain issues, and negotiating new contracts. "Your client appears to be running a multi-million-dollar enterprise with remarkable acuity," the lawyer finally told Robert. "I can't ethically pursue this case." But the most interesting reactions came from unexpected places. My phone rang one evening. Marcus, Vincent's son. "Grandma?" His voice was uncertain. "I just saw the will conditions. Is it true?" "Every word," I said. "I haven't called you in a year," he said quietly. "I didn't even wish you happy birthday. Why would you leave me anything?" "Because you're calling now," I said. "Because you're 22 and still have time to choose differently than your parents. The money will wait. Your character won't." He was quiet for a long moment. Could I come see you? Maybe learn about the business? For real this time?" "Bring work clothes," I told him. "You're starting in the kitchen." One by one, they trickled in. Chloe came next, then surprisingly, Sandra's twins. They sat at my kitchen table, that same oak table, and listened as I told them stories they'd never heard. About the food truck, about their grandfather, about what it really cost to build something from nothing. "Why didn't our parents ever tell us this?" Emma asked. "Because they forgot," I said simply. "Success made them forget hunger. Comfort made them forget struggle. But you can remember. Even if you didn't live it, you can choose to remember." Meanwhile, my children's lives unraveled thread by thread. Without their executive salaries, they couldn't maintain their lifestyles. Vincent's country club membership lapsed. Sandra pulled her kids from private school. Robert's BMW was repossessed. They'd built their entire identities on being heirs to Chen's Pacific Treats. Now they were just unemployed, middle-aged people with expensive tastes and no marketable skills. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd become exactly what they'd tried to make me: irrelevant. 6 months after the cruise, I stood in my kitchen preparing for Sunday dinner. But this table looked different now. Ellen had moved in, bringing warmth and laughter back to the house. Marcus worked full-time at our Portland facility, learning the business from the ground up. Chloe had started her required minimum wage job and called weekly to share what she was learning about hard work. Even Sandra's twins visited regularly, helping me develop new tea flavors for the spring menu. They'd discovered they actually liked creating something real, something that didn't depend on their last name. "You know they're calling you the Phoenix again," Ellen said, arranging spring rolls on a platter, rising from the ashes of family betrayal. "Good," I said. "Phoenixes know how to protect their nests." The doorbell rang. Marcus went to answer it, returning with an uncertain expression. "Grandma? It's my dad." Vincent stood in my doorway, 50 pounds lighter and years older than 6 months ago. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen before: humility. "Mom," he said quietly. "May I come in?" I studied him for a long moment. "Are you here as my son or as someone looking for a handout?" "As someone who finally understands what he lost," he said. I stepped aside. He didn't ask for money, didn't mention the will. Instead, he told me about the job he'd finally found: assistant manager at a restaurant supply company. The hours were long, the pay modest, but he was learning what it meant to earn something. "I'm 55 years old," he said, "and I'm just now learning what you knew at 30. I'm sorry, Mom. Not for the money. I'm sorry I forgot who you were beyond the checkbook." I poured him tea, the same oolong blend I'd served in the food truck. "Sorry doesn't change the will," I said. "I know," he nodded. "I'm not here for that. I'm here because I miss my mother. The real one, not the ATM I turned you into." That night, he stayed for dinner, not as an heir or an executive, but as a man learning to be a son again. Sandra and Robert would take longer. Their pride was thicker, their entitlement deeper. But Vincent's presence at that table was a start. Later, as Ellen and I cleaned dishes, she asked, "Do you regret any of it?" I looked at my kitchen full of chosen family, at grandchildren learning the value of work, at a son humbled into growth. Through the window, I could see lights blazing at Chen's Pacific Treats #1, Maria's team preparing for another dawn rush. "They skipped my birthday," I said, "so I gave them something better, a chance to earn their place at the table instead of assuming it was reserved." Ellen smiled. "And if they never learn?" I dried the last plate, the satisfaction settling into my bones like warmth. "Then the trust funds will build interest. The business will thrive without them, and I'll keep making Sunday dinners for people who show up because they want to, not because they have to." Outside, Seattle's rain began again, but inside my kitchen was warm and full of voices that chose to be there. My 80th year had begun in solitude, but it was ending in abundance, not of money, but of truth. They thought I'd given them nothing. In reality, I'd given them everything, a chance to prove they were more than their inheritance. Whether they took it or not was no longer my burden to carry. The will stood. The Phoenix had spoken. And for the first time in years, I slept without wondering if I was loved for who I was or what I was worth. I was Margaret Chen. I'd built an empire from $1,000 and a broken heart. And at 80 years old, I'd finally learned the difference between being needed and being wanted. That was worth more than all the money in my accounts.